Good evening. And thank you so much for being here on a Monday evening after a long weekend that gets longer, because this is what happens for a holiday weekend, right? My name is Martina Popescu, and I am the co-director of Her Migrant Hub, together with Dr. Dana Alonso, present here. Very happy to welcome you all this evening. We will have quite a feast, not only with the food, please make sure you get some snacks, but with the topics that will be discussed, and particularly with the people that are here. About 4 years ago, we started a conversation regarding forced migration. Forced migration as it impacts women, forced migration as it impacts women with children, forced migration as it makes a difference in our communities based on the way in which we respond to it. About 4 years ago, I had the immense privilege to meet Niurka. And we were sitting, if you remember, in one of the classrooms with David and Niurka and Tanzilia, and we're talking about what could be done differently, right? And one of the possibilities that emerged related to starting with the women themselves. What a concept, right? Starting with people with lived experiences of forced migration, because we are not the experts. Because we don't know what are the challenges, and even when you know what are the challenges faced by the migrant population, we don't quite know what it means for them and how it affects their lives. And how an answer or an intervention that we take pride in can actually harm people, simply because it started from us and not from them. Fast forward 4 years later, we have at this point almost, I think we're close to 100 students that were trained in forced migration issues. We work with multiple organizations in the city, many of which are here today. And more importantly, we are still working with that core group that we started with. And Niurka was a part of that group and still is. So this evening, we'll start our conversation about forced migration, resilience, strategies to move forward, keeping in mind that we are at a cross point as a nation and as a city. So we would invite you to really watch the documentary that will be screened tonight, and then think about important steps, important action that we need to engage in, simply because we cannot afford not to. Simply because come January, we will have to act. But as Niurka reminded me, this is not a new thing, and we should have acted already. So we have some catching up to do. So please think about this, because after we screen the documentary, we'll get an opportunity to speak to 5 very important pioneers in the field and start thinking together. How can we prepare? If, let's say, come January, we need to take to the streets, or to go to our representatives, or to change our approaches altogether. What can we do together to prepare and mitigate the harm that we know will be done, while also identifying protections that are important for the people we directly work with? This is my introduction. Thank you again for being here, and I would invite the director of the film to introduce the film and the protagonists, and then we'll move on with it.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Martín Blanco, and I am a filmmaker here in New York City by way of Maracaibo, Venezuela, and Minneapolis, Minnesota. So tonight, I'm so excited to be here with you to share En Tiempo Prestado, In Borrowed Time, which is a short documentary film I made in collaboration with Niurka Melendez, Hector Arguinzones, and their organization that they've cultivated over these past 8 years, 8 years, via Venezuelans and Immigrants Aid. So I actually met Niurka and Hector several years ago when their son Samuel acted in a short film I made about the socioeconomic and crisis and political unrest that was unfolding in Venezuela around 2017. And I remember the moment being this like very faded, almost predestined moment, because in the middle of the audition, I realized that their son was someone who I'd actually seen before in the Humans of New York blog. They had actually taken his portrait back when he was around 7 years old. And I remember it stuck with me because he had expressed that he wanted to be president of Venezuela one day. And I just remember thinking like, oh, here's this little kid in his like New York City uniform, like, I guess the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. And I just, had to get to know this family, and that was my indicator that I needed to involve this young kid in his first role while acting. Fast forward a couple years later, and after the pandemic, I found myself having a lot of conversations with my family members, with some close friends, who were about to embark on their migration journey to the US. As well as seeing a lot of the discourse that was going on in the news about a huge flux of Venezuelan people making their way to the country through the Darien Gap. And it became really important for me to fill what I saw was a vacuum, a hole in the whole discourse that did not take into account the humanity within the stories that was happening, the emotions, the transformational journeys that a lot of people were going through that were instead reduced to some sort of statistic or some sort of news anecdote. Through that process, I was where I discovered VIA. Somehow we went through the whole production process of my film without talking about VIA once. I don't even know if VIA was yet a thing back in 2017. But then, as fate would have it, I reconnected with Niurka and Hector. I came to visit them at the work that they do in the church in the Upper West Side here, and I think it's 86th Street, St. Paul and St. Andrews. Where they have a big orientation sessions for migrants who have just recently arrived in the States and want to get oriented to the legal process towards immigration and asylum seeking. So yeah, I think I'm really grateful to them for opening the doors to me, and I feel really honored to have sort of stepped into their world for a bit, seen the impact that they're having, and I think that they're truly a testament of what it looks like to lead with your heart and what an asylum seeker can accomplish if they are given the opportunity to contribute to their new adopted community. So thank you guys so much, and I hope you enjoy the film.
He construido un mundo en un piso de arena, en donde tú sabes que en cualquier momento puede venir un tsunami y se lleva todo. En el pending estado desde febrero del 2016. Tengo 7 años y 4 meses. Yo no sé si me van a aprobar el asilo. Nadie me lo puede garantizar. Es parte de entregar todo hoy, porque yo no sé mañana. Yo soy muy sincera cuando digo que no estaba dejando mi país en el momento que yo dejé Venezuela en marzo del 2015. Yo nunca me despedí de mi familia, yo estaba segura que iba a regresar. Yo me recuerdo en el 2015 nosotros buscando abogados, asesoría gratuita. ¿Qué son buscadores de asilo? Eso es como refugiado. La gente no entendía que existe la migración forzada, existe alguien que no quiere estar acá. Y hay personas que entraron en conciencia de que estaban yendo a su país un año después. Y eso es fuerte. Yo rechacé mucho la ciudad. Mi cuestión emocional era tan... Yo no la podía controlar. ¿Por qué tengo que aprender todo esto a la fuerza, a duro? Yo no pedí nada de esto. ¿Cómo vas a creer? No hay peor ciego que aquel que no quiere ver. Cuando tomé la decisión de quedarme en este país fue por mi hijo. Él es un maestro. Samuel me enseñó la paciencia, me enseñó el coraje. Héctor es el balance de mi vida. De los 33 años juntos, estos últimos 8 para mí y 9 para él han sido los que han puesto a prueba nuestra relación en todos los sentidos. Vía nace de la necesidad de nosotros mismos de encontrar información para un buscador de asilo. La nacionalidad venezolana es la única nacionalidad en los Estados Unidos que no cuenta con un consulado, que no cuenta con una embajada. Vía nace de esa necesidad de decirle a la comunidad, mira, aquí estamos, vamos a ver qué juntos podemos construir, juntos, con nuestras propias acciones. Me considero una ciudadana comprometida. ¿Cómo tú quieres un cambio si no eres parte de él, activamente? Y eso es lo que las personas que hemos tenido que salir forzadamente de nuestros países, de alguna manera, a los golpes, entendemos, asumimos y tratamos como de cultivar en las sociedades donde nos toca volver a nacer, ¿no? A veces tomo un autobús y agarro ese autobús hasta casi al final de su parada. Entonces ese trayecto y ver a la ciudad, al concreto, pues, eso me calma. Y a veces hasta agradecerles que me tengan. Como que oye, gracias, muy amable, de verdad, gracias por su paciencia. Gracias por tenernos a tantas personas. Me siento cambiada. He aprendido a aceptarme, he aprendido a entenderme, he aprendido a tener compasión conmigo misma. Entendí que ejercer ciudadanía no necesariamente tiene que ser desde Venezuela. Si se me da la oportunidad, puedo construir mi hogar en donde yo me sienta que pertenezco. Mire, es que ya yo siento que yo fui otorgada, I was granted already. Lo que me falta es un requisito, pero ellos lo que no saben es que ya yo he ganado.
This one? That's okay. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I have the honor of inviting our panelists up to have a conversation about that powerful film that we just watched. If you guys want to come on up, and Martín, if you want to join us, well, that would be great. I'll do some introducing. So I feel like now we all know Niurka, but she's the founder and co-director of Venezuelans and Immigrants Aid after leaving Venezuela in 2015. She's been navigating the U.S. asylum process since February 2016. In addition to her leadership at VITA, she serves as a volunteer community interpreter and digital publishing manager with Alcoholics Anonymous. Her dedication and expertise make her a powerful advocate for the immigrant community. As a political scientist from Peru, she received a degree in law and political science from the National University Federico Villarreal with a postgraduate specialization in public project management at the University of the Pacific. She has worked at public institutions such as the National Youth Council of the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Health, and the National Council for the Integration of Persons with Disabilities of the Ministry of Women and Vulnerable Populations. Ministry of Production in Peru. She was forced to migrate to the US in 2022 with her husband and twin children. Tanzania Foreign has been working with immigrant communities in New York City as an ally, consultant, workforce counselor, program manager, and core volunteer since 2010. In the last 8 years, she has supported hundreds of asylum seekers as a volunteer navigator with asylum-support and RUSA LGBTQ. She is also a published community-engaged researcher and social work educator. And last but not least, Robin Altman is supervisor for asylum seeker services and vulnerable populations at Catholic Charities Department of Refugee Resettlement. Robin is a social worker with a background in community work, program development, and qualitative research. She earned her MSW from Columbia University and is passionate about building infrastructure focused on people, dignity, and joy. In her current role, Robin supervises case management programs for asylum seekers and mental health services for refugees, asylees, and other new arrivals, prioritizing trauma-informed care, community support, and building individual capacity. We are so pleased that you're all able to be with us, and Martín, we now also feel like we know you as director of the film. Perhaps we could start with Niurka and talk a little bit about what this film meant to you and the message that you hope to convey and how it translates beyond just your story.
Oh, wow. Oh, thank you for...
That's all.
Well, first, thank you for having me, and thank you, Martin, for, make me talk a lot. When I first watched the movie, I said, when did I say that? Oh my God. It was easy for me to connect with him, not just because he is a Venezuelan person, but the way he approached us and the way we felt he was genuinely, sincere and open to the topic. And for us, it's always important to raise awareness about the forced migration, especially in a country in which they are really used to think of immigration and migration, people dreaming of being here, and how to explain that without making people feel wrong, that we don't want to be here, but we don't want to be here. Is how I can explain that. And I think the way he did and the way he still is spreading the word about that is just amazing, and I will be always grateful about that. So I felt connected because of that, basically. The team for me is crucial, because when I found myself in that point in which I didn't know what I was in 2015, when I went to different organizations and I didn't fit as a DACA person, because my son, even though he was 6, we were in DACA. We came in 2015, so what you mean by that? Then undocumented, I got my passport, and my passport has a stamp that I legally entered the country, so I'm not undocumented. Then a refugee, we are not, till this point, almost 25 years later, we are not recognized as a refugee people, even though we are the second largest displacement around the world. So we weren't also a refugee, so what we were. So how to explain that in our own words when we didn't even understand us in that point? Right? And then in a city in which, again, being a migrant was such a, you were dreaming about being here. So, dreaming of having that short documentary, explaining that in such a nice way, even though I have to be honest, every time I watch it, it's like, oh my God, that is true, it's still true. But yet, knowing that could reach more and more people and even plant the seed in more and more minds, for me, it's a way to say we are doing our part, no matter where we are and what part of our process we are at this moment. So it's a second Niurka that is just traveling around the world through Martin, and he speaks English better than me 2,000 times, so I know he's gonna say better yet. And that for me is a way to say it's a legacy. It's a legacy that I know will echo to many voices, not just Venezuelan woman, but many, many others that are still coming up to the US and even to New York.
Yeah, I think what I will add is one thing that we talked about. I love that you brought up dreams, because we talked about dreams a lot. And we talked about the notion of what does the American dream mean to a forced migrant. And I remember you expressing, I mean, we had like a 2.5 hour long conversation that I had to wind down to 5 minutes, so you guys can imagine how difficult that was. But specifically, this quote really stuck to me, which unfortunately I couldn't find a way to stick it into the film, which was, I remember you telling me that your American dream is to be able to return to your home country as a free person.
Yes.
And I felt that that's something that still sticks with me really powerfully. And maybe that feeling isn't fully present in the film. However, I think that desire to build that community, to connect with that base, that spirit, if you will, is very much there.
I think one of the things that I heard in the film, and one of the themes that I think really stood out for me as a clinician in the back of my mind always before an academic or a researcher, was this idea of how you found yourself and finding new identity in a place where you didn't necessarily want to be. And I wonder if that's something that some of our other panelists may speak to in their work, if that's something that you've heard or how you kind of connect to that idea.
Bueno, yo vengo de Lima, Perú, y lamentablemente la zona de Latinoamérica pues está muy convulsionada, ¿verdad? Está muy contaminada con esta ideología extremista, de izquierda, comunista, como es el caso de Venezuela, y bueno, también a Perú llegó esto con Pedro Castillo, y bueno, lamentablemente yo también fui una de las afectadas, y el día de hoy puedo decir que no puedo regresar a mi país. No puedo regresar a mi país con mis hijos y mi esposo porque mi vida corre peligro y la vida de mis hijos también. Es con lo que yo quiero empezar esto.
Okay. I am. Hola. It's not working. Okay. I am from Lima, Peru. Unfortunately, because different social situations that Latin America is living right now related to communism. The example is Venezuela. In the government of Pedro Castillo, I have to leave my country because of my political thinking.
Yeah.
And it's because of that I cannot go back to my country. And I have to leave in January 2023.
Y bueno, me identifico mucho con lo que acabo de ver. La expresión, el nombre de la película donde dice En Tiempos Prestados, ¿verdad? Y es verdad, o sea, nosotros como inmigrantes, al menos en mi caso, aún viviendo en un shelter, siento que estoy viviendo un tiempo prestado, que todavía no es mi vida, no es mía, ni la de mis hijos, ni la de mi esposo. Pero a la vez también agradezco tanto a esta selva de cemento por habernos acogido. Pero hay buenas perspectivas porque nosotros somos personas que trabajamos, que salimos adelante, personas sanas, buenas y que queremos contribuir a este país también.
I identify myself with the film, it's borrowed time, because I feel that I am living a borrowed time. Even when I am in the shelter, I feel that this is not the life of my children, my life, or even the life of my husband. However, I think I am grateful to this city because it has, I am grateful with the city, and also I have good perspective because we are people who can work, who can build something good in this city.
Yeah. Y bueno, por ejemplo, mi familia y yo fuimos parte del programa MRAP. Escucharon el programa MRAP, donde nos daban la oportunidad de poder tener una vivienda con cocina. Y bueno, Como tengo hijos pequeños, a nosotros nos emocionó mucho esa idea. Fuimos parte de este programa y al cual agradecemos tanto al Estado, porque nos dio la oportunidad de vivir, se podría decir, libres, tranquilos, independientes, en un departamento donde no teníamos el control que teníamos en un shelter, donde teníamos una cocina donde preparar a nuestros hijos los alimentos. Realmente fueron épocas muy bonitas, estuvimos un año ahí, pero sabemos que este programa es simplemente un programa piloto. No tiene, si es que al cumplir el año no pagas la mensualidad, que en este departamento costaba algo de $2,800, que era demasiado para nosotros, pues simplemente uno tenía que dejar el departamento. Y esa era la realidad. Tuvimos que dejar el departamento y volver nuevamente a la ciudad. Pero yo...
I had the opportunity to be part of the EMBRA program. This is a program that some asylum seekers can get one apartment. They have to live in the shelter. I am explaining just, yes. They have to live in the shelter, they have to have children, and they had to apply for asylum already. And yeah, so Yashila was part of the EMBRA program, and it was a good opportunity since the apartment had a kitchen, so they were able to cook. It's something that they cannot do in the shelter system right now. And they have good time. They were able to feel free, like in their own place. However, after when they finish the program after 1 year, they have to start paying the rent, and the rent is $2,800. So they were not able to stay in that place.
Y bueno, pienso que cada familia es individual. En mi caso, pues tengo mis mellizos de 4 años de edad. Uno de ellos tiene autismo. Y lamentablemente mi permiso de trabajo y Social Security se equivocaron en una letra en mi nombre, la cual esperé muchos meses por esa corrección en ICE. El error fue de ICE y eso impidió que yo pudiera empezar a trabajar y a tratar de repente de juntar ese dinero para poder quedarnos en el departamento. Como digo, cada familia es muy particular y es por eso que tuvimos que regresar a la ciudad, a un shelter. Yo creo que NRAP fue creado para sacar a las familias de Nueva York y tratarlas de situar fuera de la ciudad. Pero en mi caso, lamentablemente, no pudimos y tuvimos que regresar, pero igual nosotros estamos muy agradecidos porque pasamos momentos muy bonitos, incluso pude recibir a mi mamá aquí. Y bueno, esa es parte de mi experiencia.
Okay. So each family is different, and Yashila, I have twins, and one is under the autism spectrum, and I applied for my work permit. However, when my work permit had a small mistake in my name, so I was not able to work, and because of that, I was not able to save some money to pay the rent. And therefore, I have to return to the city, and now I am living again in a shelter. Even though I am very grateful because I have the opportunity to share some time with my family there, and even my mom was able to come to New York and stay with us. I think the EMRA program was created to move people, asylum seekers, move them outside of New York and live there then outside of New York. But some families have to return because they are not able to stay there and pay the rent.
Yes, that's
Great. One of the things that I know that you focus on is capacity building, and I'm hearing in Jessica's story and Niurka what you shared this idea of folks building capacity for themselves, perhaps not even understanding what resources might be available, or having some resources that then get taken away or they're not able to maintain, and wondering what you might have to say.
Yeah, it's interesting, I think, to think about that in context of the film, which I found so incredibly moving, by the way. That was a very, very beautifully, it was so beautiful. I was very moved by it, so thank you very much for bringing it. I think that one of the things that social workers, particularly in the city, have been talking about in terms of capacity building is that there is a lot of energy in New York City to be a community and to welcome new people into the community. And so there's a lot of efforts that are mostly siloed by people who are trying to do something, do anything to try to welcome new arrivals to the city. That's really exciting. I focus a lot on trying to make sure that those people are connected with other folks, that some of those programs can be connected. Some people might be raising funds to have a volunteer interpreter, but they might not know that there's existing interpreters and they could use those funds for something else. And so trying to make sure that connections exist among community members and service providers. I think that what struck me in the film is the idea of borrowed time. And in New York City particularly, there is a lot of movement and a lot of advocacy regarding new arrivals, very new arrivals. The city is focused primarily on this population because they are housing a lot of them, and so it's economically one of the most impactful things that is happening for city government. And so there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of acknowledgement of the transience of people who are living in migrant shelters. And there's a lot of advocacy being done that we are also doing about making sure people are allowed to stay in migrant shelters, making sure they're not being evicted after 30 days or 60 days. And the transience does not stop once someone is able to stay in a shelter for 60 days. The transience stays, the feeling of perhaps not knowing where you are, where you belong stays. I think that especially when people advocate, there's a big focus on gratitude and making sure that people feel gratitude. And I'm hearing even on the panel, like it's a conflicting conversation, like they're grateful to be here, and also there are so many things that should be done to live with dignity and be, full people who are capable and of continuing capacity. I kind of can't remember where I was going with that. Give me a sec. Nope, it's gone. But it was gonna be good. Yeah. Yeah.
I want to kind of return a little bit to your identity question. So migration changed you a lot, right? And the story, I think, illustrated the whole change of not only attitude, you as a person, right? You became a different person through this experience. So you brought yourself, but then your identity is shattered. So you pick up these pieces and trying to build totally, this is how I see totally different person, because nobody wants your skills, you don't speak English well, and your education, work experience doesn't matter. Like, I've been through this experience myself, so you come and nobody cares about you, and you're an adult person with the whole life behind you, and the future kind of very unstable, especially in this situation when you wait for your papers for 7, 8, some people wait 10 years to get an immigration status. So living in limbo changes you too. Like all this kind of liminal state, you're stuck in this limbo, and it's very hard on you psychologically, but at the same time you find meaning. You found meaning in your family. So Niurka mentioned your son, your career, building community. So you reinvented yourself and rebuilt yourself so beautifully, and it's showing like your unique story. Of course, not everyone can do that. I'm just saying that you are the lucky one who were able to rebuild yourself, your life, and tell your story, and also shape your family life, also yourself, and shape the community, giving people power and trying to educate your own community and elevate people in your community. I think it's
You are the leader. I think your story is amazing, and the way you, as a director, told this in a very short time. It's so moving, and you see so many different things being said in this, how many, 7-10 minutes. It's just amazing, like the power of art. And it's just showing that there are so many stories how people rebuild themselves from different communities. And I think we have to show all these different unique stories more in this way, because art touches people's heart. So this kind of thing touches people, not some kind of dry analysis or description of the policy, right? We need this kind of stories to show people. So this is what we are going through. We didn't choose to come here. It's been very hard to adapt and build and rebuild. So it's showing the strengths of immigrants in general. So, but now, such a time that people preparing what will happen next year, people are so scared, like people I work with, they're very scared. So we need to build more dialogue using this, the power of art to go into communities, to our elected officials, to kind of continue building the goodwill. So we welcome more and more people, that we accommodate people, we help people rebuild their careers and lives and start living again, you know. Thank you so much for this film. Thank you.
So I'm gonna move us at some point towards thinking about what can we do to prepare for what's to come over the next few years. But something that you said I think was really important, which was this idea that Niurka, as a leader, right, was potentially the lucky one, right? Like not every story looks like that. And I'm wondering, I know that several folks on the panel use a trauma-informed care perspective, and what do you think put you in that position? What are the resources, whether internal or external, that you were able to call upon to allow you to rebuild such a strong identity?
Wow. I think, too many times on the ground, finding myself on the ground with just regretting, and then trying to use that feeling of frustration and anger to do something really meaningful. I understood, I guess, 2 years after I was here in the US, that I cannot keep myself in the corner. And it's a way that, being a mother, and I guess being also a big sister for that could apply for anybody, not necessarily being a mother, in which you have to give the example in order to prove others that it's possible. Honestly, I don't believe in lucky. I do believe in the power of people and willpower. And I don't recall exactly when I regained my confidence, but I do remember, I did remember, one time I said, you know what, and we have to break the paradigm around immigrants. I don't need to keep washing plates. I don't want that for me. And even though I knew, I didn't have any plan in mind, I was failing all the time, but somehow feeling that I have to stand because of my son and even my family and the trust of my parents who were in that moment back in Venezuela, that I have to somehow to digest by forcibly that I have to do my part no matter where I am. So I learned, being outside of my country, that we can do a lot for our country, being even outside. And it was at the beginning really hard for me to understand that, because I was so committed to my community. I lived in a neighborhood that were just straight 10 blocks up and 10 blocks down, really small neighborhood. And I understood, being outside my country, that even doing your part in that small neighborhood, you were doing your part. So, of course, and I'm an IT person. I didn't even imagine myself, leading an organization. I was just trying to raise awareness about this kind of feeling and too many who are still up there trying to do their best. And I think VIA in general, our organization is a proof of at least 24, 26 people who are asylum seekers themselves, TPS holders, some of really few of them asylee already, and really few people who decided to do nothing, just remain in the country. They are the proof of the will of power. I mean, the empowerment have to be a real empower in which leaders have to just give and give in order to imagine their community being alongside them. So you know, people who understand by their own experience that information, they have to be informed. We are not here to make people cry for us. We are here to make people feel, oh my God, if I empower that person over there, they will be back to us and our community and the society and the neighborhood and the country a lot. And that is my interest and also the interest of the community. So if we somehow start to change that, and we are doing our part from VIA by engaging people to get as soon as they can in the path of regularizing their immigration status. That is the real freedom, is the way I see it from my own personal experience. But in the meantime, because 8 years and more than 6 months still waiting for my asylum decision means that I don't remain in the corner. I still keep moving forward, but you know, it's a matter of time, and it's a matter of even, we don't know tomorrow. You don't need to wait for your asylum case. In real life, we don't know tomorrow, right? So we do our best today. So that is the way I see it, and I think if we keep empowering, real empowered, our community, thinking of leaving all kind of primary aids as soon as they can and put themselves in that counter sooner than later, starting giving back to their community and their society. That way, I think by actions, we can prove countries, host countries, that we have way to contribute to them. Mm-hmm.
So I'm hearing changing the narrative about what migrants bring to a community, as well as finding opportunities for yourself to have moments of self-efficacy and of empowerment, and finding your community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bueno, estar aquí en este país enfrentando muchos desafíos como madre de mis hijos pequeños, en este caso de un niño especial también, pues es muy duro, muy fuerte. Estoy muy feliz, quiero compartir mi felicidad con ustedes porque la semana pasada empecé a trabajar en Caridades Católicas y para mí eso es un gran logro y me siento realmente muy feliz, pero también es otro reto con mis hijos y mi esposo, poder compartir, arreglar nuestros horarios. Estamos los 4 solos aquí en este país. Mi esposo también, gracias a Dios, va a empezar a trabajar, pero otro reto es cómo vamos a hacer con nuestros hijos. Se cruzan los horarios.
So I want to share a little bit about, it's been difficult for my family. For me, like I mentioned before, I have a child with special needs, but I want to share with you happy news that I started working in Catholic Charities last week, which is very exciting. But it presents another challenge, which is really figuring out schedules between me and my family. And luckily, my husband has also started work or is going to start work. But it's another challenge of figuring out how are we going to take care of our children and make our schedules work with this change.
Sí, en realidad es todo un reto, pero bueno, siempre hay un apoyo. Así que mañana empezamos esta experiencia y voy a tener que caminar sola con Salvador de la mano. Él corre y se dispara para cualquier lado, él tiene autismo, pero bueno, es lo que me toca el día de hoy, es uno de los retos. Y sí, se extraña la familia, se extraña la ayuda de una hermana, la ayuda de la mamá, de la abuela, ¿verdad? Pero bueno, es lo que toca, así que estamos empezando nosotros recién a poder establecernos en este país. Sentimos miedo, sí, sentimos mucho miedo de lo que vaya a pasar en enero, el 20 de enero, pero sabemos que estamos haciendo las cosas bien, hemos presentado nuestro asilo. Mi esposo y mis hijos tienen un cierre administrativo en su asilo, así lo dictaminó la jueza, pero mi caso todavía está pendiente. Bueno, vamos con mucha fe.
So yes, it's all been a challenge, and I think tomorrow I start with this new experience. I have to walk with my son, who again has autism, by myself, walking, like holding his hand and walking with him, which is difficult because he likes to go this way and that way. But yeah, it's all been a big challenge. But we presented our asylum applications already, and my husband and my two children have what's known as administrative closure or prosecutorial discretion on their asylum cases. But we feel a lot of fear about what's going to happen in January 20th. But we're going forward with a lot of faith.
So, which brings us to thinking forward, right, over the next 4 years. What might be some recommendations, some thoughts you have about what are next steps? How do we help protect? What do people need to know to protect themselves, to be prepared? Thoughts, ideas?
I'll go.
I know the answer.
It's a huge question. It's at the top of my mind, at the top of everybody's mind, and likely will be for the next, perhaps next year or so, or 10 years, depending. I think that, everything that you have shared are incredible examples of, what we would call protective factors in social work, or the things that make you able to build more resilience and be able to show up for yourself and be able to create pockets of joy or pockets of peace in a larger environment of turmoil. And that is something that often is found with people who have experienced some kind of major trauma. It's often, protective factors are what we try to build the most for people who've experienced forced migration. You've talked about your family relationships, grounding yourself with being a mother, perhaps being an older sister, the ideas of being together with your community, doing something to provide information, having some kind of structure, some kind of consistency. All of those things are key to being able to have peace with yourself and be able to kind of continue living, which is the most important thing that any of us can do. Protective factors include all things like engaging with communities. So I think that VIA is an incredible example of something that's really important, which is just communities getting together. There doesn't have to be a mission statement. There doesn't have to be funding. There doesn't have to be anything besides getting together and sharing space and talking about what needs to happen. One of the most effective ways to contend with trauma or to allow it to not pervade one's life as much as by being in community with other people. So support groups are really necessary. You don't need a support group. You don't need some kind of, you don't need an excuse to have a support group. Support groups can be for any small thing, anything that you might perceive as small but becomes larger, or anything that has the potential to become larger, anything that's affecting you at all. You can talk about it with other people who it might also be affecting. I think there's different spheres of impact that we can have when January starts. I think being in New York, we know in this moment what it's like to live with what I consider a hostile administration. And so we also know a little bit how to deal with that in New York City. I think that it's important to remember a lot of funding for refugee services, for asylum-seeker services, for anything having to do with new arrivals comes from the state and comes from the city. So continuing to advocate within New York City and within New York State is going to be really important. You can go to City Hall hearings. They're really long. but they're useful. Can go to Albany, which is kind of far. But I think that the idea of sustaining is one of the most important things that communities can do. And so anything to provide some kind of way to get through is going to be important for supporting people. Barring that, again, there's a lot of different levels to be involved with, and all of them matter. Work authorization is decided federally, asylum, like immigration judges are appointed federally, and so the system will definitely be affected, but the federal government is not necessarily, or there's a lot of things that we could do on a city and state level to have a really important impact and a really useful impact in the coming months.
You mentioned the community is very important. I think I also noticed people start coming more and more, trying to join and be close to people who speak their language or other cultural closeness. So I noticed this already because people gravitate more. So the community is growing. I specifically work with a transgender asylum seeker recently. And I know Niurka helped to develop this group for LGBTQ Venezuelans. I work with another group, with Eurasian LGBTQ group, and we work on transgender issues with them, and this community is growing too. So, I mean, the community is so diverse, what I'm trying to say, and the challenges a little bit different for different subgroups. Another thing I wanted to mention, you talked about children. So just today, I had a family, a mother was supposed to go for an interview with Emma's storage program, but she couldn't because her child got sick. And then she said, but my child is only 2 years old and doesn't go anywhere. They live in shelter. So she couldn't leave the child anywhere. So there is no help with childcare of asylum seekers, a huge problem that I see in the community. So it's kind of another direction. I mean, we have kind of to support families more so they can go for job interviews, they can go study English. They want to do many things, especially mothers carry this burden of childcare without any support. And I know in shelters it's so hard. Just yesterday, a family said that the microwave broke. So because it's very regimented, the shelters are very regimented environments. So you cannot just walk or give or bring stuff there. They told us we cannot exchange the microwave. But the kids now for a week, they're without hot meals because of that. And she keeps calling and asking like, what to do? My kids just don't have hot meal anymore. And they don't let us to change this microwave because they don't let people to help to enter the shelter, just do anything, or remove or change things there. So it's this kind of thing have to be told, So there is all these obstacles for daycare, childcare, the food, microwaves. All these things happen every day, and people are suffering. I mean, we're talking about human beings. Yes, we provide shelter, but how people live there, it's just very morally and psychologically very hard on families and on any people, or on transgender or gay couples. I mean, I see different types of families and different types of people in shelters, and they all have different issues and challenges in those shelters. So, I mean, it's... So since community is growing, so it's our job as advocates to tell the stories, to describe what's going on, to share the successes, but also to share all these hard challenges, like how you go to court, there are no lawyers. I mean, you have 3 master hearings and you still don't have an attorney. So what's the next step? I mean, the people are scared. If I don't get an attorney, will I get deported? There are thousands and thousands of people in this situation right now. And people are scared of ICE coming. I mean, I already had a run-in with ICE looking for asylum seeker in my house. And because the New York City cannot do anything. ICE is a federal force. They can come to your house with a full gear and with guns, and I mean, nobody can stop them because somebody neighbor told something that there are some asylum seeker lives there. So this is kind of a situation we are preparing for. So if ICE comes next year, I'll be shouting at every corner. I mean, we as advocates, organizations, as groups, as communities, we have to protect our community by telling about these incidents and saying like what's happening. This is like unbelievable. It cannot happen. They can do it underground and they want to keep you silent. This is what's happening. So and you know what ICE officer told me? I'm a citizen already, by the way. So I got my American citizens, and this ICE officer said, if you don't cooperate, you know what will happen tomorrow? I say, what? We'll deport you. I say, you know, I'm a citizen. I say, it doesn't matter. You're an immigrant. This is what ICE telling me, who lives here 20 years, got my citizenship, working as an advocate for immigrants, and the ICE comes in my house and threaten me. So I'm just scared what will happen next year. So we have to be together. We have to share the stories. We have to go to the streets and tell the stories, right? So I'm just so angry like from this experience that just I know what people are scared for because I saw it. They come at 6 o'clock in the morning. I have 2 small kids. One is with autism. So they just bang, and 3 officers just banged the door and rushed into my house. It was in full gear, with the helmets and with the guns, looking, because asylum seeker used my address to get mail from the court because they live in the streets, you know. So they thought they live in my house. So they come looking. I'm just saying it's just already happening.
I would like to add, and taking a few of the words that you said at the beginning for your introduction, Marciana, which is basically, since we knew or learned the results regarding the election in the US, I have to tell you testimonies that we got. We have done 5 different events in which the main focus is basically inform people. We do believe about human rights, and one of the rights that we have to be really mindful about is the right to be well informed, and try as advocates and leaders of organization to try, because of course we are human, there is blood running within our veins, but yet try to put our own fears a little bit beside, because the reality is that Constitution cannot be changed because I would like to a change. So I do trust your institutions. I don't trust my institutions. I don't trust Venezuelan institutions. I don't know what is the independence of institution in my country since 1998. I learned since, I left my country when I was 43, I'm 52. Yes, I'm 52. But yet, you know, I do trust how laws works in this country, and I do prefer to keep my feet on the ground. I realize that even now, and I was telling you this, Marciana, I really appreciate your words, there is still really hard to get an asylum granted. I mean, the percentage of granting asylum affirmative since 2015, I don't know who was the administration in 2015, but you know better than me maybe, was less than 10%. Nowadays, we are talking about affirmative cases, 10, 15, depending on the nationality. But for Venezuelans, it's 10%. For immigration court, they are a little bit higher, 23%. So meaning that 100 cases they get, 23 are granted. It's still low, guys. I read the other day the numbers regarding the parole, which was removed in the current administration for Cubans, people from Haiti, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. They got, according to DHA, Department of Homeland Security, they got over 3 million cases as of August 2024, and they were only granted parole under this CHMV program, 6,100 cases, meaning less than 20%, guys. What we are talking about here. We are talking about immigration policies that are really hard. When I got the call after the results for the election, and they say, we know, Niurka, that you go to your asylum interview. I want you to know that my prayers are with you. Everything is going to be okay. And I said, you know why, guys? If my case get denied, it's because the percentage of approval are 10%. Don't play with us as a political tool. It's a really, really hard, the immigration policies in general. We cannot try to put the community, in the middle of a battle that we don't know tomorrow. They feel like saying me, I love you, we welcome you here. And the other day they might feel like, you know what, keeping Mexico, Panama, can you help me to prevent them to come here to the US? That is happening now. Someone asked me after the re-election results, do you think really that they can deport 1 million people a year? And I said, yeah, that is happening now, honey. It's more than 4 million people deported since 2020 to the present. What we are talking about here. We are talking about that we have to keep that advocacy that Tancilia, Robin, Dana, Marciana are telling, because it has been the same and it's getting worse every time it's a new administration. So we have to put the example by telling the numbers, which are really hard. I know what you mean by putting the field together, but yet putting the numbers somehow keep our feet on the grounds. And even though, of course, we are human beings and we feel like a little bit here because I tend to think this way, and a little bit here because I tend to think that way, the community is in the middle. And those who are not informed, well-informed enough, they are in panic. That is my experience since November 5th this year. That's not fair, because the reality is that unless I commit a crime, of course they will seek for me and they will knock my door. Otherwise, I don't need to feel that fears unless I commit a crime, unless I miss an hearing before an immigration court, unless I miss my supervision appointment with the police, ICE, in other words. You know what I mean? And this kind of information is the one narrative that I do believe we have to keep telling our community in order to avoid them watching influencers trying to gain money through their really high watch videos, and we in the middle misinformed and misleading. So that is our commit, has been the same based on our own experience since 2016, and we don't feel like preparing nothing special, but keeping what we have been doing, and strengthening that kind of work, because we know how, based on our own experience in Venezuela, we know how politicians like to play. So we don't want to be in that game board, but being ourselves in the reality, which is basically what we have facing since we decided to take the risk of seeking asylum in the US, which is, in general view, a really hard process, bureaucratic, complex, and hard process since, I know, 2015 at least. Thank you.
Today I read that what you mean crime. I mean, there is a thin line when it's the misdemeanor or whatever becomes crime. I mean, whatever, if it's a crime of poverty, you steal something, it depends on the amount of the goods you steal, right? At what point it becomes big crime. So, I mean, this is kind of, the crime is also kind of a slippery slope here. What is crime? You jump the subway, will it consider to be a crime? Someone complained. So what happened in my case, someone complained about this person without any proof oh, maybe they did something, you know, so the ICE went for them because someone wrote to the ICE, this person, like, suspicious, can you check on them? That's what, there was no crime, what happened with me. So there's no crime. And what the governor was telling to also, our governor Hochul, right, so she was mentioning crime, but again, the definition, what crime we're talking about, yeah.
I think I think that to your point, a lot of the government entities will do everything that they can to try to trap someone or try to say that a crime has been committed or something terrible is wrong. And so it's really, really, really up to the communities to be providing accurate information and to be providing empowering information so that if that happens, someone can say, you're telling me I committed a crime. I know that I didn't, and I know what my rights are. And I think, like, even as someone who is not new to the country and has legal status, I struggle with that. And, you know, unions are important and tenant organizations are important. And this is the same model is incredibly effective with new arrivals and in the immigration sphere. We need strong community organizations and strong community groups to be providing legitimate information, or I mean, legitimate's a tough word, but accurate information and empowering information so that people understand I can be scared of this and I have some recourse so I know who to call when something like this happens to me.
Yeah, exactly. And so hearing just the last few comments, I think part of it is, as Jashida was sharing, recognizing what are the challenges that folks are trying to deal with on a daily basis to be able to provide for their families and support themselves, right? Another part is finding support in the community for managing the fear, the anxiety, and those challenges. And the third part, I think, is equipping folks with accurate, timely information so that they, you know, can kind of have the power to control as much as they can.
And a fourth part, if I may, I think especially like Dana and Marciana, Dr. Alonso and Dana and Marciana and I speak a lot about the impact on someone's mental health, and the impact on the person is vast. So if someone is constantly trying to navigate all of these very minute issues, they are not able to build moments of joy. They are not able to build moments of peace. They are not able to live in a way that does not raise their cholesterol or their cortisol all the time. And so people are stuck in a constant trauma response, and it's the personal and the individual impact is massive of these structural issues.
If I just can add a fifth point there, that builds on everything you guys said, I think it is extremely important that we build networks. So, you know, like, people need to know their rights. They also need to know what are the lawyers what are the organizations that I can reach out to. If someone is, I know clearly based on the knowledge information I got that someone is violating my rights, where am I going to? If I feel threatened, what kind of safe havens are there available for me? And I think this is something that we need to intentionally build and strengthen going forward, because this will be the important resources that we need to have in place. We cannot wait until something happens, like Nazilia said. We have to kind of have that knowledge and those resources so people are not overcome by fear, because these things will happen, abuses will happen, but as Niurka said, we do have laws and we do have rights, and constantly making sure that people know those rights, but also that there are organizations and professionals, practitioners and communities that can support that is also very important.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I think just because we talk in social work or in any type of field where we're working with people interpersonally, there's the idea of a safety plan, especially with survivors of intimate partner violence or someone who is at risk of violence. And I think we think about violence very interpersonally. We don't think about it in kind of the large structural way that it's happening now with immigrants and new arrivals. And so the idea of creating safety plans is something that we do at Catholic Charities. But it's the idea of safety is not a word that's used in any of the it's not in any of the legislation. It's not in any of the proposed legislation. It's not in what's talked about by legislators, by the people who are creating rules. So the idea of the shelter, it's to create a place, but there's no real regard for safety or what safety means, or the idea that safety is not just, I am not at risk of violent physical harm, but there's so many more elements of safety. And I think, you know, everything that we're talking about, the part of the movie where you were in the garden with the flowers, that struck me. And I think that we try to help people and community members build those moments of safety, and there are so few to be had, and there's so few opportunities for it. And so that can be, a space can be created for that on a structural level and on a system level, but the idea of safety, I think, is what we're trying to aim for in creating. Yeah.
I'm wondering if folks here have thoughts, ideas, or questions, reactions, what you saw, the film, what you heard. Lisa, please.
I just want to thank you for the film. It's incredible. I really from my work, I always recommend VIA as an organization and your videos, because when I watch the videos that you make, are really professional, and also at the same time are easy to understand for the community. So so if they want to apply for asylum, so we say you have to watch this video, and it's a good way they can help themselves. So thank you for that also, Niurka. I also want to mention that in Catholic Charities in Santa Teresa, where we work with Sheila, since November 5th, we have received people that have some like emotional crisis. Some of them, they have not been able to sleep, and they are not even to breathe properly. They have anxiety. They say, we don't know what we're gonna do. We realized that the amount of people who were coming to our office decreased. They told us that because they know that only asylum seekers go to that office, they think they will be, the police will find them there. So we start providing them some breath exercise, like even in the case manager process that we used to do referrals, but now, okay, just breathe, relax a bit, and they talk and they live better. But maybe I was thinking now we have to get more tools to support people from an emotional way, so they will be able to, because all of them, they are thinking about January 20. Yeah. So it's something that I wanted to mention.
Buenas noches. Unfortunately, I have to leave, but I don't want to leave without thanking you for sharing your experiences and your knowledge. Martín, that was a beautiful movie, to the power of art. It was so short, and yet it packed there's so much to unpackage there. I'm a migrant, not a victim of forced migration, and it brought back feelings that I haven't felt in 30 plus years of my family really longing for their country and yet wanting to be here, but missing their family, missing the beauty of where they grew up, where I grew up. So that was very special. And I really think it's gonna magnify the message that really needs to be heard. And then Niurka, by the way, there's a bit of an irony that your name rhymes with New Yorker. Yeah. But I wanted to commend you. I mean, your sense of resiliency, your advocacy, your sense of leadership, and your energy are inspiring. And thank you.
Gracias.
So I just want to say that.
Thanks so much.
Any other questions, comments?
Hi, I work in outreach services at Brooklyn Public Library, and I just wanted to ask the panel, what do you think, what role do you think we could play in serving migrants and new arrivals? What approaches do you think we should initiate? How can we better collaborate to meet the needs?
Amazing question. First, I mean, we love Brooklyn Public Library, just to say you guys are incredible partners already, and I'd love to talk to you after this. But I think, as Jazila mentioned, particularly the shelters are, to no one's surprise, tough places to be in. It's very, very hard to feel any type of, again, any type of emotional safety, any type of physical safety, any even like your people are not really allowed to have a lot of things. And so kids lose their homework, they lose their jackets. I mean, they just don't have enough places to put things. And it particularly affects kids incredibly negatively. And so the libraries as public spaces, I think, could provide more consistency to people, particularly who are living in shelters. If there's a room that you could put aside for certain hours where people know that they could go, for certain hours they know that a child could create a little nameplate, put it on their seat, like just a place that they know is consistent and is theirs and is not something they're going to be kicked out of in 60 days, would go a really, really, really long way. Space in general is really hard to find. I think that the higher you go up in different levels of bureaucracy, the more rigid the restrictions are. And so when the government is trying to find spaces for things, or a large organization is trying to find space for things, there's like insurance issues that come up. Existing space is precious and really hard to find. And so even if the library said, we don't have the staff for this, but after hours, if you want to use this room, get a group together, have people do their nails, like have some kind of joyful event where people can just be. The space is really beautiful. I want to commend Brooklyn Public Library already, just again, but I think that you already have programs that are like welcoming. You already have sections of books that are particular for people who want to learn about New York City. I think if you could have, you have a lot of, there's like that whole business center. I'm not sure what the language access is in that center, but people who are coming, as Niurka mentioned, and especially in the movie, want to be using their skills. They want to be contributing. They don't have to wash dishes. And so if you had job materials or like learning materials in other languages, that would be incredibly valuable. That's it.
Yes, and also as simple as using your boards, your huge boards. I think there are key places in the city: churches, schools, libraries, and shelters, unfortunately, because shelters are so close. They don't allow, anybody to go in and even to deliver a free orientation as we do. But libraries are key. The boards at the library, they are just like at the window of misinformation or good information. So allow your boards to lead the community. You don't need to know all of them, just the information is there to search for official websites, such as USCIS. Don't trust TikTok, trust USCIS. For to find accurate information. It's not I heard, it's what the USCIS website said. You know what I mean? And also clarifying, because we get people, I don't know if it happened to you, Tansilia and Robin, in your organizations, but we have people that say, I got my immigration status. And what they show us is the New York City ID. So clarifying that small thing, that you are not even close to that, but you have to follow maybe whatever other website you trust. We have plenty of resources for free made by lawyers who have been collaborating with us. We have created at least 50 videos, educational videos within a year with lawyers who trust lawyers, really good pro bono lawyers that we have been meeting on our way, that they trust they are not enough. And because they know they are not enough, they also know that the first processes can be done by us, such as filling out an application. So even spreading that kind of word is really important and lead migrants, at least on those really nice places, to the right track and right information. So as easy as using your boards could be a really, good. And if, I have my card here so we can bring more ideas. Yeah.
And sorry, just to say one more thing, always, but I think another really important aspect, to no one's surprise, there's significantly more discrimination happening in shelters and the city and immigration toward Black folks. And so if the library was able to be ahead of the city in providing materials in languages like Wolof and Pular, there's a system that Africana uses where they use a QR code that has recordings of information because some of those languages and dialects are just oral. And so the city is not necessarily providing those things yet, and certainly the federal government is not, but signs in less common languages, but especially in Brooklyn, that would reach a lot of people would be really, really important.
And if I can add one thing, we were actually talking to our field department here at Fordham based on a project that was led by a different university in the city about having MSW students placed with libraries where they can provide all kinds of workshops and trainings and also curate the information. Because as Niurka said, the problem is some of the information that is going out there or is posted is not the correct information. So really working on a plan in which we can support what you do, right? And then also provide the support you need for your staff, because I can imagine, right?
We can do it.
Yeah.
We can do it, yes.
Yeah. As those safe spaces that Robin was talking about earlier, where folks aren't scared to come in, right? And have the MSW students provide some support for the community, not just the folks that working in the libraries, right? Yeah.
So thank you so much. We will talk more. Okay, so I do have one last question. I had two, but I'll try to do only one. So my previous one in my mind was as activists, because all of you here are activists, right? Many of us here are activists or want to be. What would be some of the most important lessons of 2024? But let's skip that. Or you can bring it into the next answer, and that is, how do you see universities supporting communities as we are moving forward, right? Because I think universities need to be a more intentional part of the community, but we want to hear from you. What do you think is missing, and how can we work on that to bring universities closer to the communities in these efforts?
A bath of reality could be a really good start for the universities. Going out a little bit. It's like us for a while. Let's try for a day standing out from our desk and analyzing not just by numbers, but going out and see how things has changed, not just with the immigration and forced migration and asylum processes and all this complicated stuff, but how the community now is even for us as a forced migrant and asylum seeker, we have been adjusting even our own processes, and what helped us do that is being on the ground once a week in the front line with the community, hearing them. That is a bath of reality that we take every single week. And we learned, for instance, this is new for us, that we have to have a WhatsApp community group. That is new for us. How come the WhatsApp? No, they have to send us an email. No, we have not closed ourselves. We need to help, we want to help. So for that, we need to adjust the way they like to communicate, not only because I like it, it's the way I feel more safer, right? So that is adjusting, that is the way that we somehow give that step forward if we really want to help. So for the universities, this is, wow, every time I come to this room, it's like, oh my God, I imagine too many events here, it's that, But how difficult could be for me, I mean, without knowing Marciana and Dana, to ask for this space to hold a community event, for instance? That's another question. Not for me, I know how to ask for, but how I can get it. I mean, to be heard without checking first all the requirements that might put me in a spot that they might say, you don't have enough CV to be able to use these spaces.
I can promise you one thing. As long as we are here, we'll get you spaces.
I know, señora, I know that part. But I put in without someone who doesn't know, you know what I mean? Is that, so I think there is the answer. There is the answer. As simple as that. And of course, after that, if you sit with me for an hour because I don't drink coffee, maybe hot chocolate, we can bring more topics such as having. The other day, my son came to me, and forgive me if I'm putting a personal example, but it's a good example at the end of the day because it's a life lesson. He came to me and he said, Mama, I don't feel like going to the college. And I say, oh my God, how come? Because in my country way before, it was easy to go to the college, to the university for anybody. And when he said that, I said, that feeling of a mother who grew in a family with everybody have to go to the college, and hearing my son saying that. But on the other hand, me, thank God, because I don't have to do anything and prove that I am asylum seeker and I don't have immigration status. My son doesn't have immigration status either, to explain that to the university and then finding how to. There is another answer for you, ladies.
Very good. Thank you.
And thank you.
These are very, very good suggestions and important facts that you are dealing with. Thank you. Anybody else?
We need volunteers. I mean, we have one-to-one conversation program. We always need volunteers to practice English one-to-one, and they can be like student events when we can come have a kind of volunteer fair or something, to bring our community, so to use the space, but engage the students, to invite students to the community meetings, so they come and meet the community, right? And chit chat and decide what to do. Many people need help with papers, with accessing services and stuff. I mean, we always need volunteers, and I think if students can help us, that would be great.
Absolutely, thank you. And actually, we did start a program, thank you for saying that, with undergraduate students, having conversation hours and tutoring hours in the Bronx. And we got a great response, so that's one way to continue to strengthen that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I have perhaps three. One is, again, trying to get around the rigidity of bureaucracy, and in the university, there's plenty. Providing direct assistance to people as much as possible. And so I know for the course that we help facilitate, asylum seekers receive a gift card. Or anytime we're asking for someone's feedback, if there's a way to say, oh, we can pull some of this funding and just give someone, an individual, a little bit of money, any opportunity for that is incredibly useful. And there are a lot of opportunities for it. And I know that the two of you obviously know that, but any other department or any other class that has any type of discretionary funding, that's a really, really great way to be able to give directly to the community. A second piece, I think, is in terms of materials. We're talking about training, we're talking about community members being excited, lay people being excited, not necessarily knowing where to go next. Where is information coming from? Is it coming from TikTok? If universities were able to provide access to some of the courses or provide some kind of free access to information, I think that would be really useful for both providers and community members to be able to see, oh, if I'm interested in providing care, or interested in having someone come live in my house because my church suggested it, let me look at this quick resource about what trauma-informed care looks like and what dignity looks like, and make sure that I'm not just doing it for some kind of weird, do some kind of reflection. So some access to resources would be useful. And I think I've really often been thinking about when the COVID pandemic hit, a lot of the medical schools in New York City graduated their classes early so that younger doctors could be drafted basically as part of the effort. And I think that there is an equally, if not more urgent situation with asylum applications and a significant dearth of legal access. And so if universities were willing to loosen, not necessarily graduate lawyers early, but loosen some of their regulations or have workshop days or clinic days, more clinic days where people could come and get support filling out their application or practicing what a hearing looks like or some kind of pro se help, that would be instrumental in making sure that at least people were entered into the asylum system or entered into a system. I don't think it will help with the backlog, but some kind of comfort or some kind of care. I had 4 things. I think the last thing is I'm mentioning it just to put it on whatever record this is. I mean, I think that any opportunity there is to provide someone with a photo ID is really, really useful. And sometimes there's just like a huge line to get an NYC ID, or someone needs 2 types of photo ID for something. Any opportunity to get someone a school ID with their picture on it is great. If they are a visiting scholar in some way, they're like coming to the building for anything, if you could use any loophole to get them a student ID, that's so important. And it also helps people with having some kind of extra identification on them. If they're concerned about a run-in with some kind of NYPD or ICE official, it's always more comforting to have as much legitimacy or community involvement as possible.
Yeah.
Library
Thank you
cards with
so
pictures
much.
would be great.
Thank you so much. Great ideas. Grace.
I just want to repeat the question in Spanish for Yasila. Solo para repetir la pregunta, si quieres contestar. ¿Cómo pueden las universidades ayudar más a las comunidades? ¿Cómo pueden involucrarse más en el trabajo de las comunidades para ayudar a la gente?
Bueno, yo creo que en esos momentos es muy importante el trabajo de la mano entre, por ejemplo, las especialidades que estudian la sociología, que es muy importante, la psicología. En estos momentos, pues, yo estoy trabajando recién hace una semana en Caridades Católicas, pero llevo 1 año y medio como voluntaria. Al inicio, por ejemplo, lo hacía con mucha esperanza, mucha alegría, mucha ilusión, pero el día de hoy yo soy buscadora de asilo y trabajo en la oficina de buscadores de asilo. El día de hoy yo tengo que disfrazarme prácticamente para poder darles la tranquilidad a mis hermanos inmigrantes. Yo soy inmigrante, pero tengo el día de hoy que llevar esa paz, esa tranquilidad, esa esperanza a ellos cuando hasta a mí misma me hace falta. Entonces yo creo que es importante ahorita este trabajo entre las universidades, esta oportunidad que nos dan aquí Dana, Marciana y todo el equipo de trabajo, y esto replicarlo porque esto es muy importante para nosotros, que esto abarque más espacios, ¿no? Más comunidades. Eso es todo.
So I'll try to interpret. If I miss anything, I'll ask. It's really important to draw from and collaborate with different academic institutions that focus, for example, on sociology, on psychology. As I mentioned, about a week ago, I started working at Catholic Charities, and I'm an asylum seeker working with other asylum seekers, with other immigrants. And there are moments of a lot of happiness, of joy, and but at the same time, I have to in some ways like dress myself up to be able to help other people, because I'm also having all of these feelings, all of these difficulties, but I'm there to help other people. So I think the more that universities can do to provide spaces for community, for us to be together, to contribute, is really important.
Thank you so much. Gracias. Well, this brings us to the end of this evening, and thank you so much to all of you that were here and chose to spend these last 2 hours with us. And we want to let you know that there is food, so please take the food, okay? Take with you, eat here, whatever you want that is here to be used. Also, there is a resource corner there in which you have materials that were brought by different organizations. We have some on intimate partner violence, gender-based violence. We have some materials from Catholic Charities on the resources and services that are provided there. We do have some materials from WES, which is World Education Service, regarding their services that they are providing. And most, if not all, these materials are at least translated at least in one other language. Some are in multiple languages. And then we have some materials that we developed at Her Migrant Hub that are also translated at least in Spanish. So thank you so much. Please take some time to mingle and network. And thank you so much for this inspiring film. It's incredibly beautiful. And Niurka. Niurka and Hector, I know you are a very important part of this. Thank you so much for the work you are doing. It is inspiring, and I hope we can continue to support you in your work and continue to engage with each other as we are approaching times that will be difficult, but we can overcome. And we will not just be depressed. We'll keep working together. Thank you so much, and have a great evening.